Hello, my loves. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Dustina. This is Spiritually Boujee Astrology, and we're going to take a look at the astrological transits of March the 2nd through March the 8th. Now, before we get into any kind of transits or anything like that, I want to remind everybody that I have extended the BOGO special through parts of March, most specifically until March 15th. What does that mean? All you got to do is go to the website, www.thespirituallybougie.com. You go to the little triple bar right at the front of the website. You go down to astrological services. You're going to see a couple different packages offered. You specifically want to click on BOGO readings, and you get two 90-minute sessions for the price of one. And again, this package is going to be available until March 15th. That's the big thing there. Now, we can go over anything in sessions. We can go over what's going on in life. We can go over your birth chart. We can go over family dynamics and synastry. The thing about these sessions is I always go into them with a little bit of an idea of some of what we need to talk about based off of what's being activated in the energy. But then there's the human effect of whatever you actually are going through that we start to tie in together so we can line up where the astrology is impacting your life and help you make decisions from that point on, or at least give you an idea of the timeline as to how soon you can expect decisions to be able to be made. So there's a practicality whenever it comes to these kinds of sessions. They're very much a coaching session. I'm not necessarily talking at you. It's very, very conversational. And again, if you book this BOGO special, you are helping me raise money to start my nonprofit because that is on the agenda this year. So there's that. Now I want to remind everybody, I'm purposely using parts of the Mercury retrograde to play with software stuff. So if you're going to see some differences each time, just give me some grace. Leave me alone for a little bit. Let me play with what I need to play with. Okay. Just wanted to put that part out there. And now let's start to talk about the vibrations going into this week because we had a lot of things that happened last week. We had the start of the Mercury retrograde. We were in that first full week of eclipse season, still reeling and dealing with that connection between Saturn and Neptune. And now we're going into this week feeling a little cracked. I've used this analogy with so many people this week. And whenever I was meditating this morning, this is the only thing that I kept seeing was just all of the elements around eggs. And I feel like a lot of people are going to go through this week and you are either going to feel like a cracked egg or you're going to be cracking some eggs this week. Now think of an egg. An egg is a form of life. It's a staple in every cookbook, in every home, in every pantry. So many people, they get to the point that they don't even want to pay for eggs anymore. So they just buy a bunch of chickens and have them lay the eggs. But there's a concept around elements of life that's very much focused with and around eggs. Whenever it comes to different situations and scenarios, when we think of eggs, there's a couple ways that I anticipate people are going to feel about this week. And that's going to be a little different for every one of you. But hold on with me for just a second. Some people are going to feel like Humpty Dumpty this week. Think of Humpty Dumpty. Sat on the wall, had a great fall, and all the king's horses and all the king's men could not put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Anyone that has gone through shadow work and gone through a personal healing process, you know what it feels like to be Humpty Dumpty. Anyone that has lost an anchor person in your life, you know what it feels like to be Humpty Dumpty. And the reason other people can't put you back together again is because they don't know how all the pieces fit together to begin with. They don't know how you did things. They don't know how you were capable. They don't know what you went through. They don't know the pain. They don't know the experience. Nobody can put you back together again but yourself when it comes to shadow work. And so much of this Mercury retrograde is bringing up things from the past, things that we did not heal properly before, but it is time for us to heal them properly now. It is time for us to adjust. It is time to put some pieces back together. But the thing is, the only way we can remember how to put the pieces together is we need to remember parts of the fall. We need to remember the past. We need to remember why we took certain steps, why we made certain decisions, why we went in this direction. We need to remember why we cut someone off. We need to remember why we chose the things that we chose and the direction that we went into. What sparked that? For some of us, we made the right decision back then, but there's still some part of us that lingers on unfinished business. And we have to readjust the piece. You need to cut some pieces off, polish it down a little bit, reshape it a little bit before we can put it back together again. There's reflection to this week. But for a lot of people, the reflection comes through activities. It comes through action. It comes through conversations. It comes through the connections with people. It comes from the past coming full circle all the way back around in ways that we were not expecting. And think about this Mercury retrograde. I'm not going on one specific timeline. I'm literally just saying the past. Sometimes I can say a specific timeline. Right now, I can't. I can't. I try. I couldn't narrow it down to one specific timeline for one specific person. It just feels like the past. I was like, oh, yay. But there's something that we need to see differently, something that we need to rethink and reframe. There's something about reliving that experience. And sometimes the thoughts, that spiraling thoughts of last week that has flooded back around again is coming through because there's some part of this lesson that can be repeated right now. Might not be repeated with the same person, but there's some part of it that is familiar and it's coming back through, and your intuition is saying in that spiral energy of just being locked on that one topic, this one thing over and over again, there's a reason why. People don't realize that part. Well, there's always a reason why. So for some people, you are the egg this week. You are Humpty Dumpty. But for other people, it's a cracking from the inside. It's like an awakening, and it's like a birthing of life. And I'm still thinking about an egg, but I'm literally thinking about the egg in its life process. The egg is laid, it is incubated, it is cared for, it is loved. It's kept warm by its mother or in like little heater lamps for other people nowadays. Everybody's got a different program. But it's kept safe and allowed to just be and to sit and to thrive. And then after so much time, that little form inside turns into a little being, and that little being is able to collect itself and grow. And it's like, I'm so scrunched up in here. I need to stretch and stretch and kicking the legs out and moving its little big wing shoulders and its little wings and little flappy flaps and its little head and its little neck and its little beak. And after so much time, the egg cracks, but what comes out is new life. For some people, there will be something new brought to light this week. And that feels most specific closer to the end of the week, because we will have a Mercury cazimi at the end of the week. Whatever comes to light is going to be something that is very, very new for a lot of people. It might still have reflections of the past, but it's going to also make us very, very aware of something new in our daily life, in our world, and our surroundings. And think of the concept of the chicken coming out of the egg for the first time. This is all it's known, is the inside of a shell. And once it's free, what has happened? Where am I? Everything feels magnanimously bigger than it actually is. And it goes into exploration. It requires curiosity. It requires trying things out for the first time. It requires trial and error. There are going to be mistakes. And that takes me to the third concept around what I've pictured with eggs. I explained this one to my Jiminy Cricket friend the other day. Of like, it's so interesting to watch a parent regress because it's truly like watching a child in reverse. You know, the first time you ever cook with a child, they ain't cracking that egg right. They ain't doing it right. They don't have the muscle memory. They don't know what pressure to use. They don't know the concept of what's gentle and what's not. Some of them will sit there and go crack, 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 crack. It's not cracking because they're trying to be light as possible. Others are going to be like smash, and it's going to be a mess. And I'm telling you, for parts of this week, it's going to be a mess, whether you mean it to or not, whether they meant it to or not. Because for some of you, it's not going to be you being the mess. It's going to be the mess is falling onto your plate. And you're going to want to, you're looking at all the yolk going, oh, great, thanks, baby. Salmonella is wonderful. You don't know what that is yet, but hey, you cracked an egg. So proud of you. So great. Ugh. There's a cracking to this week. For some people, it is necessary in your healing process. For some of you, it is going to bring new things to light and change a dynamic in your environment, in your world, and in your atmosphere. But for other people, it's going to be messy. For some, that's a necessary messy. For others, it's going to make you aware of just how much you've been ignoring for quite some time. So much of what's been going on behind your back for quite some time. It's going to enlighten you in ways that you did not realize enlightenment was necessary. Now, whether that is in a situation, whether that is in health, whether that is in your relationship, whether that is in your business, doesn't necessarily matter. It's still the concept of something's meant to come to light this week that we didn't see coming and is definitely not a part of the plan. Humpty Dumpty did not plan to fall. That bird did not know what to expect when he wanted to stretch. He didn't know that there was going to be a whole other world. The kiddo didn't know that messy egg yolk all over the countertop can result in salmonella. They don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And it is better to go into this week being prepared to crack a few eggs, being prepared that you might crack from the inside out, being prepared that life is going to be really freaking messy. Because we got a lot of things going on this week. We have the Virgo eclipse. We're in the middle of the Mercury retrograde. And we're going to experience that first energy of another planet going into Aries. And this is going to be Venus. And as soon as she does, she starts a conjunction to Neptune during the Mercury cazimi. There's a lot of things coming to light this week. And I anticipate for a lot more people, it's going to be messier than you could have imagined 3-4 weeks ago. It is what it is. So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at these transits. Let's take a look at this energy. And remember, Dusty's playing with stuff. Deal with the fact that I'm playing with things. Okay, so we're starting this Monday, March the 2nd. Now, we're starting the day with the moon going to be in Leo. By the time we get into the actual morning and daytime hours, the moon will go into Virgo, but right now we're starting with the moon in Leo. Between 1:30 and 3:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, Uranus is going to hit a square to the moon. So this right here happening in the overnight hours could manifest more in the Sunday evening hours for people, not necessarily in the overnight hours, but if it is in the overnight hours, there might be a restless energy. And where the restlessness is like, it gets you spiraling. It's like you're going down the internet rabbit hole for some reason. For other people, there could be some kind of like unrest in the energy. And there's more than one reason why I'm saying there's unrest. Part of that has to do with the Uranus square. The other part of that has to do with the next thing. And that's going to happen more in the early morning hours. And this speaks of disruption. Now, we're going to take a look at this. I got this now at 6:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. And in these hours between that 6:30 and 8:30 time frame, the moon hits this opposition to Mars. You can see it's basically exact right here at 6:30. So really we need to say from 5:30 to 8:30. But here's the moon hitting this opposition to Mars before the moon changes signs. And for some people, there's going to be this energy that speaks to something needs to be done, something needs to get completed, something needs to get cut off. And that has to do with the moon's opposition to Mars. For other people, this speaks to some kind of arrival because, again, at 6:34 a.m. Central Standard Time, but put this down to 7:30, the moon is going to go into Virgo. And once the moon goes into Virgo, there is, again, something that screams an arrival that really has a lot of disruption to it very, very quickly. Now, if you're not prepared for this, this is going to be messy. This is going to be a headache for some people. And the reason it's going to be a little bit messy has to do with the fact that once the moon goes into Virgo, it's now in the sign of the next eclipse. It's immediately in the full moon energy. And for a lot of people, there is a change of plan, a change of something that has already gone on that is now reaching a climax. It's now reaching a crescendo. It's now reaching some level of a peak as we go through the moon in Virgo over the next few days. So again, for some people, the early morning hours of Monday can have a restlessness that speaks to an ending. For other people, it feels like the arrival of something very, very disruptive. And again, something not necessarily going to plan. And it's amplified by the fact that once the moon goes into Virgo, we're now in an eclipse vibration. Yay, we're in the full moon vibration. We're in the lunar eclipse. Let's keep this going. The moon goes into Virgo. And at 8:16 a.m., so bumping this from 7:30 to 8:30, Mars goes into Pisces. So these two hit in opposition to one another, some level of disruption. For some people, that disruption is going to be something has to come to a close, something has to come to an end. And if it's an ending of some sort, it's something that's been this way for a very long period of time. But for other people, it's not an ending. For a lot of people, it's the disruptive arrival. Two luminaries, the planet of Mars and the moon going into Virgo, changing signs simultaneously speaks to something coming in. It speaks to an arrival. And this very much feels like that. So this opposition changes signs together. And this is the highlight of the day. After the Mars goes into Pisces and the moon goes into Virgo, there are no other direct transits. So we're dealing with lunar eclipse energy all day, even though we're not actually viewing it and experiencing it until the 3rd. And we are in this first round of Mars in Pisces, triggering something tied to our emotions, triggering something, again, from the past in some way, and bringing it back to the surface. For some people, this will be the first egg. Just be aware of that. Is it going to have to be exact at 6, 7, and 8:30 in the morning? No, it doesn't. Human effect is this is still the first day of Mars for everybody. The first day of Mars in Pisces. It is what it is. We're still building to a full moon and we're in full moon energy, even though we're not actually dealing with an actual full moon. Whenever we get into that later part of the evening time, the moon will hit a conjunction to the south node. But because we don't have anything else really going on during this time, this feels more like downloads and it feels like something that impacts our mindset. It feels like a kind of a click of some kind of an internal change. But again, it's not accompanied with another kind of transit. So it's one of those things that I feel like that when it hits, it's an internal download. It can be an activation of somebody having something going on in the body because the south node is the body of the dragon. But for other people, it is going to be more of an internalized vibration of something that must be released, something that is lost, something that needs to be let go of, something that we are purging, something that we are, letting be messy. Because again, cracked eggs. We're going to keep it going. After the moon hitting the conjunction to the south node, it's most exacting right here in this 10:30 hour. So we'll feel it between 9:30 and 11:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. But after that, we're going to get into the 3rd. And of course, on the 3rd is our full moon eclipse in Virgo. And that is going to be most exact for me at 5:37 a.m. So I'm putting this now at 5:30. Here is the sun, 12 degrees, 53 minutes. Here's the moon, 12 degrees, 49. It's close enough for government work. It's fine. We're there. Here is our full moon in Mercury sign. And again, what is Mercury doing? Mercury is retrograde in Pisces. Every time, I think I've already said this once before, I think I said this on the month ahead. Every time I meditate on this, and I've meditated on this for months, I go Virgo eclipse, Virgo eclipse, Virgo eclipse, Mercury's retrograde. Like I always immediately default back to the fact that Mercury is in retrograde. And there is something again about things that are just being brought to the surface, little things coming to a peak, coming to a testing vibration in some way. There is something that is just amplified, and it's amplifying elements of the Mercury retrograde. And for some people, this is going to be connected to people. For some people, this is going to be an emotional thing. For some people, it is going to be a logical decision that still speaks to impacting emotions. Like sometimes logically, the best thing to do is to cut off your family member and go no contact. But the way that they respond is like emotional turmoil. Like, how can you betray me this way? That type of thing is like, no, no, no. Logically, this made the most sense for everybody on my side of the family. This is the best thing for my people, but you don't like it. I can't control that. It is what it is. Just be aware that this amplified energy also is not necessarily clear. And it kind of, again, takes me into some of that cracked egg analogy of like that first little peek of going through the shell and we see something much, much bigger on the outside going, what is that? What is that? And there is a shift. There is a shift through this eclipse, but it is a logical shift as well as an emotional one. It's a necessary part of healing process for a lot of people. It's reaching a peak of certain things whenever it's like the past coming back through. There's elements in this that is going to impact everybody. For some people, it is going to be gentler than others, but I feel like everybody feels the impact in one way, shape, or form. Oh, the moon hits that opposition to the sun most exact between 4:30 and 6:30 a.m. So many of us are going to be waking up mentally onto something, thinking of something, drawn to something, pulled to something, turned to something, decisive about something, feeling a change in some way in our logical brain whenever it comes to the morning of March the 3rd, whether your time zone is, 4 a.m. Well, in that 4 a.m. time zone, whenever the eclipse happens, or even if it's going to happen for you around 11 a.m., I still think the internalized energy for you is waking up in this mental shift, but knowing that part of this decision making process still has emotional elements involved, even if they're not all taking shape in one moment. So just be aware of that. Okay. As the morning progresses between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m., getting this down to 10:30. There we go. Jupiter, 15 degrees, 10 minutes. This is a stationing Jupiter. Remember, we are now a week away from Jupiter ending its retrograde, but Jupiter still has a couple of transits that are going on. This is kind of a minor one, though. Jupiter hits this sextile to the moon. It's adding an extra element. Technically speaking, the sextile is to the eclipse also. So for some people, there can be things around the doctor, the guru, the teacher, whenever it comes to Jupiter, the wealth and the prosperity when it has to do with Jupiter, masses of people when it has to do with Jupiter, things that are impacting our faith and our belief system having to do with Jupiter. So be aware that there can be like this need for support or understanding, talking to someone it's like they're the adultier adult, but it's more in the philosophical sense of like, hey, can you help me understand? This is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. There's something here. And you're right. There is something there. And Jupiter is offering some level of support. And it's again, it's felt the most exact between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Some of y'all are going to be getting calls from your doctors, your nurses. Some of y'all are going to get your lab reports or something around this time. Some of y'all are going to be talking with the teachers around this time. Some of y'all are going to be talking to somebody that, again, offers you support and helps you with certain life lessons at different periods of your life. Now, as the day progresses, we still have this mental overwhelm energy. And for some people, there will be some interactions about the shift of opinion as we go into the later evening on the 3rd. What I described next is felt the most exact between 5:30 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. So if you are some of my listeners over in Australia and New Zealand, this is literally the next morning on March the 4th. Need to get better at talking about the different time zones with everybody. For some people, this is going to be in your overnight hours. For a lot more people, this is going to be in this evening time, especially if you are here in the States. But here's the moon hitting this opposition to Mercury. The moon is in Mercury's sign. And we do kind of have that trifecta effect going on in the sense of like Mercury's in Jupiter's sign, Jupiter's in the moon sign, and the moon is in Mercury's sign. So we have this little trifecta energy of like the mutable signs working or coexisting, all being connected back to Jupiter being in Cancer. And we're in this turnaround energy that is making us rethink, relearn, heal from something from a different perspective. And when the moon hits the opposition to Mercury here, we are going to be dealing with the shift of opinion, the shift in the plan, the things that we weren't anticipating going wrong, or we thought we had something figured out for just a little bit. And now there's something coming through that's like, because they've had a change, it's making us shift our opinion. And there is this need to have certain conversations, but I also feel like there's going to be this heightened element of at least one side being emotional in a way that doesn't make sense. But so many people are, again, going through stuff from the past that they're responding from their wound. And if you don't know that going into parts of this vibration, again, you're going to try to have a conversation and certain things are just not going to make sense. Like, what do you mean you're so upset? Why are you so upset at me? What is going on? And the thing is, like, there's no control over this. For some people, it just is what it is right now. People are responding from their wound in so many ways. And it's kind of crazy the way that's kind of unfolding. But I feel like there can be a challenge. There could be certain discussions. We do understand of a shift of opinion, or at least we are learning of one, even if we don't necessarily understand it. But remember, the moon is in Mercury's sign, and we just, through the earlier hours, like 12 hours before, had the lunar eclipse in Virgo. So this really speaks to something that needs to be voiced, talked about, a shift of opinion in some way once that moon hits the opposition to Mercury. And this kind of sets the mood for the rest of the night. I'm really sorry to say that part. After the moon's opposition to Mercury, whenever it comes to the third, there's no other direct transits. So now we're going to go ahead and move into the fourth. You can see that right here. Now the moon is still going to be in Virgo for a good portion of this day. It's actually not going to move signs until the lunchtime hour. So we have a lot of little things that are going to go on while the moon is still in Virgo, but we also have stuff that's going to go on once the moon goes into Libra. So lunar wise, there's a lot more lunar transits to the fourth. So I'm making everybody aware of that. When we get into the morning hours between 7:30 and 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, so I got this now at 8:30, the moon does this thing where it hits a trine from Uranus. You can see that here, and an opposition to Venus, like simultaneously. So this is all going to be felt really more between like 7:30 and 10:30 a.m. So the moon's opposition to Venus is felt between 7:30 and 9:30. The trine from Uranus is felt the most exact between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. So I'm giving kind of a little bit of a bigger window there. That there's something about the morning that we start having some kind of conversations. Some element of this is very, very unexpected for a lot of people. There's some things that are kind of a shock to the system, but then there's another thing that the shock is based off something being expressed or learned that also gives foreshadowing to parts of the weekend because of the hidden transit going on between Venus and Saturn right here. That hidden transit would be called a CONTRA-ANTISCIA. This is where we would literally fold the charts in a very specific area of the sky, and these two would mathematically equal out to 30 degrees. So it's like a hidden conjunction. So it feels like we're getting some kind of direction when the moon hits the opposition to Venus, the trine with Uranus. Venus and Uranus will actually hit a sextile themselves, most exact between 10:40 and 10:58 a.m. So if I go ahead and bump this to 10:30, you'll see Venus 27:48. Here's Uranus 27:49. It's close enough. There's something in this vibration over the course of the morning that speaks to something coming through very unexpectedly or very excitedly. Something can also be tied to technology in this time frame. There is again multiple people involved, multiple elements, multiple areas of the chart are here, but this also feels like some kind of acceptance or some type of awareness of something that's going to be a lot more serious in tone as we get into the weekend. So just be prepared that whenever we get into that morning time of Wednesday, there's a practical, logical planning, necessity level of busyness that's really big and a big part of the conversation. And not everybody is going to necessarily understand it. Some people are going to be kind of confused. Some people are going to be overwhelmed. But we are wrapping up Venus going through Pisces, and parts of her energy is going to be shifting as this week continues. So just be aware that whenever we get into Wednesday morning, part of it is still going to be based off the eclipse's energy, but part of it is just going to be having to deal with the fact that we have a transition that is underway again with planets changing signs this week. Okay. Now, at 12:56 p.m. Central Standard Time, the moon is going to go into Libra. So now the moon is going into Venus's sign. And again, Venus is wrapping up her time in Pisces. While the moon is in Libra the next few days, it'll wrap up its trip to Pisces, but then it will start its trip into Aries. So there is something that feels like really good that we're trying to hone in on, that we're trying to put together, that we want to make happen, that we're accepting certain energies while the moon is going through Libra, and we feel like everything is going to be right and fair and balanced, or we're doing everything in our power to make things feel right and fair and balanced. But the way it's going to come through afterwards might not necessarily be accepted in such a way. And there's something about this energy that it's very, very noisy while the moon is in Libra because it's an air sign. We're going to be talking. There's things that we're talking about, or like we feel like it's going to go a certain way. But what I'm telling you is in some ways, what we're starting to feel is not quite what we think it is. And there will be some reality checks for certain people once we get into the weekend. But that's not where we're at right now. For some people, it feels a little delusional. It feels a little bit hopeful. Again, we're looking at a focus and accepting some kind of responsibility, accepting some type of detail, but not completely clear on all of it. And I can't say that part enough. There are things that we do not know clearly while the moon is in Libra. So let's be fair about that. And let's keep this going. Oh, the moon goes into Libra. And what does the moon do? As soon as it goes into Libra, it starts in opposition to Neptune. Now, this is going to be felt the most exact between 2 and 4 p.m. I got this now at 2:30. Here's Neptune, 1 degree, 11 minutes. Here is the moon, 0 degrees, 50 minutes. It's more exact, closer to about 3 p.m. If I bump this to 3:30, we actually start that opposition to Saturn. It's actually going to be going more exact around 4 p.m. So we immediately go into something that, again, feels like there's a responsibility, there's a role, there's a hopefulness with the Neptune stuff, there's confusion in other ways, there's a belief change in certain elements. And again, there's still a hopeful, even if it's a little delusional type of energy that can be in some placements right now. For other people, it's just very much like, I know I'm about to go do something and I'm not completely clear on it. No matter how many questions I ask, I don't feel like I'm still getting a clear answer. So there is some challenge in this vibration once the moon goes into Libra. And it is felt intensely very quickly because, again, the moon hits that opposition to Neptune and this opposition to Saturn. Now, as we progress into the actual evening time, we have one other transit that's happening on the 4th between 8:30 and 10:30 p.m. So I got this now at 9:30. The moon, 4 degrees, 36 minutes, hits a trine to Pluto at 4 degrees, 38 minutes. There's something that needs to be understood, something that needs to be voiced, talking about a power dynamic or a power struggle for other people. It is talking about the mundane things, what's been going on behind the scenes, below the walls, below the surface, your plumbing situations. If it's that type of mundane thing, congratulations, because it could be a lot worse, as much as that can cost you money. But for other people, there can be something about a frustration, something about a power dynamic, some type of power issue, a struggle, a fear that is slowly again taking shape, But again, it feels a little foreshadowy for some people. It's foreshadowing a future vibration, not necessarily something in that moment. It's like, I fear if this continues. I fear if this goes wrong. I fear if something happens. And there needs to be like a voice understanding of what that fear is in some people. And again, there can be things about March the 4th that foreshadow what starts to happen over the weekend, most exact between the 7th and the 9th. So I'm making people aware of that again. There can be foreshadowing, pre-planning, acceptance in that regard of the 4th that impacts the weekend. So for some people, you know exactly what that is. For other people, you're not going to have a single clue, but there's some kind of thing about the 4th that feels like it has foreshadowing. All right, we're going to get this going. We're going to get into the 5th. The 5th is not super heavy in transits. The moon's going to be in Libra all day long. Venus, hosting the moon in Libra, is still wrapping up. Like, this is its last full day in Pisces. So for some of us, like, our minds are going to be busy on the things that we're working on, but not necessarily in the same energy as what we'd been in earlier in the week. There needs to be some levels of conversations per se. And I think this is really interesting because we have two things that are happening right in this vibration. Well, okay, we have one big thing happening here that encompasses the entire day that will speak to a second thing engaging with it later in the day. I need to say that better. Sorry. At this 11:30 hour, the sun is going to hit a trine to Jupiter. Now, normally this would be like a luck energy. This would be a hopeful energy. This can be a positive energy. And for some people, there could be something hopeful and positive in this moment. Again, comes down to what you're dealing with in your personal life, in your own personal karma, in your own healing process. And for some people, the sun hitting the trine to Jupiter is going to feel like support. It is going to feel like a lesson of sorts. It is going to feel like a care or a consideration. It is going to feel, again, like a shift in luck. But it's not going to feel that way for everybody when the sun hits the trine to Jupiter. And the reason I say that is, again, Mercury is retrograde. Mercury is getting closer to the sun. And again, this is the last full day of Venus in Pisces. Some of us might feel like a certain level of understanding that, again, something is either ending the last day of Venus in Pisces, or something is about to kick off and something's about to begin. Because whenever we get into Friday, Venus is going to go into Aries. And that's going to shift the mood, and that's going to shift everybody's dynamic. That's going to shift some opinions. And there's a defensive energy that's going to kind of start to take shape through that. Emotionally defensive for a lot of people. But the sun hits the trine to Jupiter. The most exact between 11 and 11. Yeah, 11:11 to 11:34. That's why at 11:30 you're seeing it exact. And then once we get into the afternoon, between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m., so I got this now at 5:30, Jupiter is going to hit a square to the moon. But while the Jupiter is hitting the square to the moon's technically in a quincunx to the sun, therefore not seeing eye to eye, not seeing something clearly. And I could see this going a certain way. Like, some of us are going to be having conversations in the morning time of like, this is what we need for support. This is what's going to be super helpful. This is what we should do. This is the best thing that I can advise you to do. This is the necessary part. And then you get to the evening time and you go to tell another person like, hey, so-and-so said we should try this. And somebody's looking at you going, who's so-and-so? Who's Sally? I didn't know you worked with a Sally. I didn't know that this was going to be an idea. I didn't know you were talking about this with people I don't know about. So there's some part of this vibration that we get into the evening time and it feels like we're having a conversation, or we're giving details, or we're giving directions to a person because someone else gave us the idea, but that person that's getting the directions, they don't know who so-and-so is. They don't know where you got this idea. They don't know where you're getting this information. And there can be some challenging aspects to it, or levels of disbelief, because again, well, I don't know that person. I don't know that person that you talk to. I don't know that situation. But for other people, it's just going to be tea time and gossip. Did you want to hear about what happened at work today? There was so much drama in people's lives. And you know what? There's a scientific study out there that now actually says that couples that gossip together tend to stay together because they're intertwining elements of each other's lives. As long as you don't start emotionally responding on behalf of another person, do your thing. Just be aware that when we get into the afternoon, there can again be some kind of guidance, direction, potential of challenge for some people to do something different, to start doing something, but the advice is coming from somebody that we don't see eye to eye with, or we don't actually know in some way. That's what a lot of this feels like. It's not a heavy day. It's a mentally busy day. And again, the moon is in Libra while Venus is wrapping up her trip through Pisces. So some of the conversation means it could be about what's either ending, but for other people, it's going to be about what is actually starting. And now we're getting into the 6th. And at 4:46 a.m. Central Standard Time, so going from 4:30, Venus 29 degrees, 59 minutes to 5:30, Venus 0 degrees of Aries. Venus enters Aries. Venus enters Mars's sign. Venus is in her detriment in Aries. Whenever it comes to Saturn, Saturn is not well placed in Aries either. And as soon as Venus goes into Aries, she's starting that conjunction to Neptune. There speaks to some arrivals that we did not anticipate. There speaks to some situations that we did not know was a situation that is likely to come out over the weekend, most exact between the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th. But this is the 6th, and this is the arrival. This can be some element of news, and the moon is still in Venus' sign. So the mood shift as we go into Friday feels like an arrival. It feels like learning about something new and not necessarily knowing how we feel about it in certain ways. Now, as we actually progress into the daytime hours between 10 a.m. and noon, so bumping this now to 11:30, the moon, 24:34 in Libra, is going to hit this opposition to Chiron, 24:19 of Aries. So we have this vibration of either talking to someone about a change that has recently occurred, about the arrival of something that has recently occurred, and discussing how it has affected us, discussing the potential of a wound. And if it's a wound, it's likely a new wound. If it's not having to do with a wound, then we're talking about the solution, the arrival of Venus into Aries. The moon is in Venus's sign. So that's why I'm adding this layer to this is, hey, now that we got this thing in, now that we got this going on, maybe we can fix XYZ. Maybe we can deal with this situation. Maybe we can put this back into a certain place. Well, that would be good, but I don't know that I can focus on it yet. Now, the reason I'm saying the lack of focus has to do with the fact that as soon as Venus goes into Aries, it's starting that conjunction to Neptune. There's going to be distractions. There's going to be things that come through that are blindsiding over the course of the weekend. And some little elements of blindsiding or not being completely clear can come through over the course of Friday, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case. If it is, it's more likely to be in this morning time area when the moon hits the opposition to Chiron, because after the moon's opposition to Chiron, for the rest of the day, the moon is void. There's nothing else going on with the moon. So it's going to be hard to get things going. It's going to be hard to get things being seen. It is going to be hard to get a certain amount of things going on. So you might have the arrival of something new or someone new, but it's just like, oh, hey, this is so-and-so, just so you know, they work here now, but they're not doing anything today. They're going to start next week. It's that type of thing. It's like having somebody come in the office and do a bunch of meet and greets and letting everybody know, hey, they're going to be a player later on, but I'm not going to tell you in what way. We'll talk about it then. We'll talk about it later. That's the kind of vibration. So if you're trying to get a bunch of things accomplished on Friday, I don't know that you're going to get them accomplished. At 10:02 p.m. Central Standard Time, so we're going to go from 9:30 to 10:30, the moon is going to go into Scorpio. And as soon as the moon goes into Scorpio, this is going to be such an interesting dynamic for parts of the weekend because the moon is now kind of in a trifecta energy. The moon is in Mars' sign. Mars is in Jupiter's sign, and Jupiter's in the moon's sign. So we have this energy of these areas of the sky working together, but it's all the water signs. And over the course of the weekend, we're going to have elements that impact all of the emotional healing dynamics. And this is why I was being so heavy about the egg thing in the beginning of this episode, because some of us are going to be cracking. whenever it comes to the weekend, whenever it comes to what starts to come to the surface, because there's going to be things that come to light, truths that come out, information that comes out, that nobody wants to accept certain things. This is going to be a very emotionally difficult weekend for a lot of people once the moon goes into Scorpio. And this is going to basically be the entire weekend. Congratulations, everybody. Let's keep going into the actual weekend because Saturday looks real fun. So we're going into Saturday. Saturday and Sunday look fun. And I'm saying this in the funny, curious way, not the funny, ha-ha kind of way. And in the overnight hours going into the actual morning time of the 7th, we're going to get to, where do I want to put this? Where's the closest? I guess 5:30 is going to be the closest. So here's the deal. Between 4:55 and 4:55 and 5:08 a.m., we get our Mercury cazimi. So Mercury goes into the heart of the sun. Remember, earlier in the week, we had an eclipse in Mercury's sign. And parts of the earlier parts of the week gave foreshadowing. It clicked a different shift of opinion. It put a peak to certain things. And now we have Mercury, the ruler of our logical brain, going into the heart of the sun, bringing something into light simultaneously. I'm not changing the screen. So simultaneously, Venus hits her conjunction to Neptune. This is going to be confusing. And this is the first Venus-Neptune conjunction now that Neptune's completely in Aries. There was one last year post-Venus retrograde. I don't feel like this ties back to that one last year, so I'm not really counting that one from then. But there could be elements from that last year, most specifically in April, that find their way back around. Because again, we did have one little Venus Neptune conjunction back then, but we had so many other transits that were going on that this was a blip on the radar. And I don't know that a lot of people are going to remember it or even correlate some of it. But again, a lot of this Mercury retrograde speaks to elements of the past coming back to the surface. And now that the moon is in Scorpio, I think that speaks extra layers to how many things are coming to the surface. We're going to keep that going. While we're going through this part of the dynamic, Venus conjunct Neptune, Mercury cazimi, the moon in Scorpio, in Mars' sign, starts a trine to Mars. Water flows emotions to emotions. This can be creative energy for some people. This is going to be interesting whenever it comes to certain like musical dynamics or artistic dynamics, if we're trying to use it in that way. And it's like a floodgate of things within pouring through. But for other people, because this Mercury cazimi is loosely still in this trine to Jupiter, we actually just had the sun trine Jupiter. We will have Mercury's trine to Jupiter over the next few days. There's so much of this energy that speaks to like emotional reflection, emotional clarity, certain truths coming to light that people didn't know before. And again, there's going to be people that do not survive this Mercury retrograde. We will cut them out of our lives. And there's so much that's just awakening right here. If you wake up Saturday morning and you are in your feelings about something, if you have some level of odd clarity in this moment of this is what I have to do, it's not easily going to be met well by a lot of people. And it's going to feel very confusing in the moment. For some people, it might be a creative energy. For a lot more people, it is going to be so confounding. The emotional turmoil and the crack in the surface, the crack in the armor, the crack in the eggs. Just be aware of this. Okay. A lot of little things happening between that 4:30, 6:30 a.m. time span. This sets the mood and the tone for the entire day. And we're going to add one more element to that between 6 and 8 a.m. So I got it down at 6:30. So we're still kind of in the same time spot. The moon breaks away from its trine to Mars and it starts its square to Pluto. And again, the moon is in Pluto's sign. Scorpio is ruled by Mars and Pluto. and the moon coming into their sign and making an aspect to both of them, even though they're in different areas of the sky, this feels like a long-term challenge coming through and shaking certain people to their core, or pushing a different level of a truth and a new kind of power dynamic that triggers insecurity deep within that we have to deal with through the entire weekend. And the human effect as to how this transposes or how this gets released or how this comes to light is going to be different for everybody. But there's a harsh reality. And again, there's a cracking in situations that I feel like it's amplified through the course of the weekend, just because the moon being in Scorpio, adding so many extra elements to what's going on. Now, after all of this energy, we're literally done with it. Air quotations on done with it. Transit wise, we're done with it by about 8 a.m. But it sets the mood and the tone for the entire day. So if you're walking through a store and you don't feel like people are talking, they ain't talking. They are stuck in their head. They are stuck in their emotions. And again, certain conversations with certain people are going to be people responding from their wounds. They are responding from pain that is deep within. Be aware of that. It's going to be going on all day long. We're going to bump this now into the 8th. You can see that right here. The moon is going to be in Scorpio all day long. In the overnight hours, the moon starts to awaken certain things in parts of the transit. So between 3:30 and 5:30 a.m., I got this at 5:30 because this actually encompasses both. Jupiter hits the trine to the moon. Between 5:30 and 7:30 a.m., the moon hits the trine to Mercury. This activates the second trine between Jupiter and Mercury. But again, Mercury just had a cazimi. Something just got discovered. Something just came to light. Something just came into focus. For some people, we didn't know it was coming because Venus was in a conjunction to Neptune. For some people, it was a light bulb moment of some level of creativity or some necessary part of our healing process. But what I think is interesting is when we hit this grand trine energy, Jupiter is retrograde. Mercury is retrograde. They're both like going backwards in the sky. And the moon's trying to come through and like bring these deep seated vibrations to the surface of like, this is what we need to work through. This is how I felt for a really long time. This is what's been happening deep within. And it's like other people, as soon as they hear it, they don't want to hear about it anymore. They don't have the capacity for it. Things aren't going to plan. Certain people don't want to accept responsibility. That's a key term right there. They don't want to accept responsibility, or they don't want to deal with how real the conversation is, and a harsh level of judgment tends to come through somehow. Why do I say that? Because while the moon is doing this grand trine, Jupiter, Mercury, blah, 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 Venus is starting her conjunction to Saturn. And this actually goes exact between 8:35 and 8:53 a.m. So I'm going to put this now to 8:30. And what do we see? Venus, 27 degrees, 37 minutes. Saturn, 27:38. Something that comes through that was not a part of the plan can have to do with the elder, Venus conjunct Saturn. It can have to do with some level of judgment, Venus conjunct Saturn. Some of us have to make a harsh judgment that other people are not going to agree with, Venus conjunct Saturn, because Mercury is retrograde and Jupiter is retrograde. They're both backwards energy. They're both thinking backwards. The difference between these two is Jupiter is stationing, and Jupiter is literally turning direct here in the next few days. This is actually going to be something that happens next week on the 10th, but there is some element of like the stalling vibration that's kind of coming through, or there is this element of something that people are trying to be supportive, but no matter how much they try to support somebody, that person keeps doing something, they keep saying something that rubs us the wrong way. And again, for a lot of people, this rubbing us the wrong way, that person that's triggering something, that they're either from the past or they're like somebody from the past. And again, the universe is giving a chance for us to go through lessons all over again and determine if we're going to make different choices this time. And the harsh judgment between Venus and Saturn might not get received well by a lot of people. I'm warning of this. I feel like there's a big cracking of eggs this week. Some of us are cracking from within. Some of us are trying to reshape and repolish broken pieces from the past. Others of us are looking at what's going on and we're just making a mess. Crack the egg, crack the egg. We're like a 4-year-old trying to crack the egg for the first time. I can do it though. I can do it. Give me another one. No. Sometimes we just gotta say, baby, no, we're gonna wait. You can do something else, okay? You can mix the flour, maybe. You can put the butter in. We can do something else. Okay. Now, immediately after this, the moon is also going to hit a trine to the sun. This is felt the most exact between 9:30 and 11:30. Got this now at 10:30. Here's the moon, 17 degrees, 15 minutes, starting to hit the exactness of its trine. I think it was exact roughly around like 10:40, closer to 10:35 to 10:40, but you can see it. It's right there. The moon hitting this trine to the sun, still very active with, Mercury rebuilding its trine to Jupiter. We're still very, very active in Venus's conjunction to Saturn. Some of what is being felt and what is being understood, some of the judgment calls that are being had, that are being discussed, that are coming to light, are going to make people feel a certain way. It's going to crack the ego a little bit. And when the moon hits the trine to the sun, it's like, hey, what's bothering you? Everything. Everything is bothering me. Because once we get to the end of the week, there's this emotional energy that feels like a bunch of eggs. And I meant what I said in the beginning. I think a lot of us are in some stage of being the egg, taking care of the egg, supporting the egg. And we are either trying to get something new to pop through. We want the little chickie, little chickie. We want it to come through and experience this new world and experience some kind of new life. But some people don't even realize there was a chick in that egg. But once we see it, it's like, oh, that's what we needed. We needed that change. And for some people, we're waiting on new life to come through. But it wasn't a part of the plan, so it's going to come with a mess. For some people, this entire week is just a mess. It's a mess upon a mess upon a mess. It's things not going to plan. It's necessary change. It's necessary parts of our healing process. It's necessary to deal with the wounds. It's necessary to deal with these deep-seated vibrations that are holding us back. For some of us, it's necessary to pay attention to the broken pieces of ourselves. Because sometimes we are the egg. We are Humpty Dumpty. And we have to reflect. Did I do this right? Do I need to polish it? Do I need to reshape it? Does it need glue before I can put it back? There's a reason things are coming to the surface. Some things that we thought we had figured out, they don't fit quite right. And sometimes the only way to fix this situation is to add a layer in between. A layer of gold, a layer of silver, a layer of glue, mortar, something that adds a buffer between situations, between the past. It allows to fix. It allows the healing. So much of the past, whenever it's coming back around right now, it's giving you the chance to make different decisions. For some of us, we just need the past to come back around so we can remember certain elements. Not that we need to relive it, but just remember how it started, how it felt, what felt right, what felt wrong. When did I start to feel like it was right? When did I start to feel like it was wrong? And there's just this reoccurrence of a lesson. But the reoccurrence of a lesson is because something about that dynamic is either in the process of repeating, or you're about to go into a situation that is similar to that one. And there's a reason the universe is making you spiral and mentally just go back over all of the things we felt and all the things we did and how we made it happen and how we did certain things, and making us reflect. Because again, we need to know, are we going to make a different set of decisions? This again is the first Mercury retrograde in Pisces without the influence of Neptune in nearly 15 years. We're done with something. And some people didn't realize you were done with something. Some of you did. And you just kind of felt that dynamic shifting. You felt yourself shifting away from certain people. You felt yourself saying goodbye to certain elements of yourself. And now, before we can really step into something new, there's a reflective part of our energy. There's a reflective part of the pattern making us aware this kind of thing is about to repeat. It is repeating right now. Will you see it differently this time? Will you make different choices this time? Will you try something different this time? Or are you going to repeat the same behavior? If you repeat the same behavior, the lessons that come next are going to be harsh. They're not going to go as planned. You can't force the egg to crack sooner than it needs to. I'm just going to go with the example of the egg because we've already been talking about eggs the whole time. You can't. You can't make people do what you want them to do. You have to watch their actions because actions are louder than words. And if their actions trigger an insecurity, that's a pattern that you need to get ahead of or separate from before it becomes a bigger issue in the new normal. Some of us, we are triggering insecurities in other people because we are changing so much and they're not changing at all because they're not willing to make the different decisions. And you now have so much going on. It's like you don't even make time for me anymore. It's like you forgot. I didn't forget. But you're making what's going on in everyone else's life about you. And as opposed to paying attention to what you need to do for yourself, you're projecting. You're getting mad at everybody else. You're taking your insecurities out on everybody else. Why? People respond from their wounds. Some of us are going to be carrying a basket this week and just gently grabbing little eggs and trying to make them feel safe and supported. And all I can do in this moment, I don't know what I was trying to say this in. What I can do in this moment is just remind you, we are in a temporary vibration, a temporary energy that is meant to teach us or give us the chance to make different decisions than what we did before. But we have to remember what we've forgotten. We have to remember the parts we blocked out before we can truly come to terms with making different decisions this time around. When those past memories are coming to the surface, you need to really compare them to what's going on in your life right now. You need to really compare them to the energetic patterns of how that person from the past kind of reminds me of Sally today. I don't have a Sally, by the way. I just always pick on fictional characters. They always remind you of Sally for some reason. That's so weird. And you're about to do something with Sally. That's so interesting. We're in a vibration that speaks to, we need to start making different decisions. We need to change our pattern. And I said it for months, you need to start doing the opposite. Don't do the patterns that you would normally do because it will likely create a wound. And if we break our patterns, if you've been breaking your patterns, you can see this energy a lot more clearly. But if you have stuck to the same old song and dance the entire time, this vibration is hell. And for a lot of you, that means by the end of this week, you're going to be the cracked egg. But for a lot of you, you're going to crack yourselves. And I don't mean this in the life sense now. I mean this in the Humpty Dumpty sense now. Be aware of that. There's a fragility to people this week. Be aware of that. Your words are going to hurt worse than they need to. Be aware of that. But sometimes that message is necessary to be as harsh as it actually sounds. Be aware of that too. Okay. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Hit me up with questions, hit me up with concerns. I will talk to everybody very, very soon. Subscribe.